Hey Nancy Drew fans, we're back with Hardy Boys number 11, While the Clock Ticked. When commenters would ask me what I think of the Hardy Boys, I've had to say that strangely enough I've never read any of them, despite owning several. So I thought it was time to finally give a Hardy Boys book a chance, and I picked the lowest number I have in my collection, which is a 1962 revision that begins with this note. In this new story, based on the original of the same title, Mr. Dixon has incorporated the most up-to-date methods used by police and private detectives. The first Hardy Boys book was published in 1927 by the Stratemeyer Syndicate, and like the Nancy Drew series, it was the brainchild of Syndicate owner Edward Stratemeyer. Ghostwritten under the pseudonym Franklin W. Dixon, the series is actually written by a number of authors, some of whom also wrote for Nancy Drew. We start on page 1 with brothers Frank and Joe curiously peering out of the window at a stranger. They quickly learn that the man, Raymond Dalrymple, was there seeking the help of their private investigator father, Fenton Hardy. Raymond has been getting mysterious death threats inside a locked and secret room in his house called a Sunset Room. When he learns that Mr. Hardy is on vacation, he asks the boys to hike over and check it out. The story, which quickly picks up a subplot about stolen jade and a crime ring, could just as easily be a Nancy Drew book. In fact, the entire world that the boys inhabit is very familiar. Frank and Joe's high-powered and respected father has passed on his skills to his sons, so they're now excellent detectives in their own right. They carry flashlights, they diligently search through clues, they often outsmart the local police, and they even have some specialized skills, like Joe is an expert in handwriting analysis. They have an Aunt Gertrude who acts as a caretaker and worries over their safety in a very Hannah-like fashion. They have a chubby sidekick named Chet, who they frequently tease in emasculating exchanges like this one. "Frank? Joe?" called Chet's quavering voice. "Is that you I hear talking?" "No," Frank shouted laughingly. "We're two ghosts." Switching on their flashlights, the boys climb back up the path. "Hi, Detective," Joe greeted a somewhat crestfallen Chet Morton, revealed in the beam of his flashlight. "What's the big idea of scaring off our quarry?" "Oh," Chet moaned. "Me scaring him? I was standing here, and this ghostly white thing—" "What you're talking about is a man in a white t-shirt," Frank wryly informed him. There's a ton of random action, like this moment where the boys are almost mowed over by a limousine. They obviously come from privilege, as evidenced by their 2-story stately home and their own motorboat called the Sleuth. There's not much about what they're wearing, but what they eat is frequently featured. Strangely enough, they usually eat sandwiches and milk in some kind of picnic setting. There are 3 almost identical meals, like this one, that turns into a making fun of Chet moment. The Hardys lifted out succulent sandwiches, a jar of home-preserved peaches, a gallon thermos of chilled milk, and slabs of chocolate cake. "Lucky for you, Chet," Joe teased. "You brought enough so there's some food left for you." One of the things I've always appreciated about Nancy is that she's very much a girl in a man's world. Although she always gains respect, she's at least initially dismissed by the clients, the police, and even the criminals themselves as being too young or too pretty or too much of a girl to also be a detective. The Hardy Boys, however, don't share this barrier, and as a result, they're always in the thick of things. They accompany police on a high-speed chase, they interrogate prisoners, and they're allowed to go on their own back to the scene of the crime to find a missing bad guy. At least in this book, I also thought that the Hardy Boys really lack some of Nancy's nuance. They're all action verbs. They did manage to solve the crime and recover the loot, but only after 11 pages of monologuing from the bad guy and a last-minute hand from their chubby friend, Chet. But in general, it's an enjoyable and fast-paced read. The brothers are charming, and I look forward to digging a little deeper into this series. So next up, Footprints Under the Window.